Hello and welcome back to A Little Less Lisa. I am Lisa and you are joining me right now on my weight loss journey. This channel is all about my journey into health and wellness, and right now for the moment I'm focusing on weight loss. I currently am on 5 milligrams of tirzepatide compounded, which is the active ingredient in mounjaro and zepbound for weight loss. So it is a GLP-1 medication similar to Ozempic and Wegovy, or semaglutide or semaglutide, depending on how you say it. But I am currently in my 11th week of weight loss, and if you want to see how I've been doing, I will have linked up in the cards over here the playlist that has all of my check-ins so you can see how I'm doing. But if you have been following my channel, you will know that I recently took a trip with my mom to Spain. And so that did require me to travel with my meds and travel while on a GLP-1 medication. I was gone for 11 days, and obviously, given that amount of time, I was going to have to do at least one injection while on my trip. So I thought it would be helpful for those of you who may be traveling. We're coming into summer here, and so I know lots of people have travel plans, whether it be via car or airplane, whether it be domestic or international. Hopefully I've got some tips here that will help. So let's talk about probably the most important part of this whole equation, and that is, how do you travel with your medicine, right? If we are on a GLP-1 medication, we have to give ourselves injections, whether that be via a branded pen or whether it be a compounded version with a syringe and a vial of medicine. So let me talk about what I did. Like I said, I am on a compounded medicine, so we'll talk about compounded first, and then I will tell you what my recommendations would be if you are traveling with the pre-dosed pens. So what I did in preparation for this trip was to think about what dosage I was going to be on, and then think about what I had in my vials. So I had a 3 milliliter vial that I still had from my original telehealth company. So when I decided to switch telehealth companies, I still had that medication and I just wanted to get started on another one. So I would just kind of be in the process and going. So my first vial that I received from the new telehealth company was the equivalent of 4 2.5 doses, or the equivalent of 2 5.0 doses. So what I did is, instead of starting on that new 3 milliliter vial that I still had from the other telehealth company, I decided to start that small vial, which only had the equivalent of 2 5.0 milligram doses in it. So I took one right, a couple days before we left on my normal shot day. And then I took what was left in that vial, which is essentially one dose left in that vial, and I took that with us on the trip. Now, I chose not to do any kind of refrigeration, and I will have linked below. There are several items on Amazon that you can buy that are, for example, for people that take insulin and things like that, that are travel pouches, that if you wanted to refrigerate things or make sure that things stay cold while you're in transit, before you get to your location and have access to hopefully a refrigerator, and we'll get into that a little bit later, then you can do that. But all GLP-1 medication can be kept at room temperature for up to 21 days without an issue. So just FYI, if any of you ever have an issue and let's say your refrigerator, goes on the blink, it dies for some reason, or your power goes out and you happen to be gone during the day and you come home and, things in your refrigerator are now more at room temperature, your medicine isn't bad, okay? You have 21 days from when it becomes room temperature to use that medicine. So assuming that you don't have more than 21 days worth of medicine in your vial, or whether you have more than 3 pens, for example, in the refrigerator, you won't be wasting any medication. So because, like I said, I had pre-planned and decided to use that smaller vial and take the first dose so that I only had the 1 dose left, I was able to just take that. I took 2 syringes with me just in case, God forbid, one, something happened in travel, or the needle as I was doing it, broke or got bent or something. I just would have a backup, and took my alcohol wipes and the vial, and I just put it all in a Ziploc bag, and I put it in my cosmetic case, and we were all good. Now, the one thing that I do want to make sure that you know is when you are taking your medication on an airline, you want to make sure that you have like a copy of your prescription. So for example, I took my vial in the box that had my prescription information on it. So it had my name, it had, the prescribing physician, etc. on it, so they could see that it was a prescription medicine and it wasn't just some random vial of something that I'm taking into a foreign country or anywhere else in the United States for that matter. So I would just highly recommend that, like I said, if you're doing that, that you make sure that you have, if it's, a box of Mounjaro or whatever, just like cut out where it has that prescription label on it, maybe out of the box, rip that part off, and just make sure that you're traveling with it so you can prove that it is an actual prescription in your name. If you are traveling for more than 21 days, and therefore you do need to make sure that your prescription stays cold, during transit, that kind of thing, or if you are just super concerned and want to make sure it stays cold at all times, then like I said, I will have one of these Amazon kind of travel pouches that's made for medication linked in the description box below. You can use this obviously for a compounded medicine and just put the vial in there, or obviously if you are traveling with the pre-dosed pens, either Mounjaro or Zepbound, Wegovy, or Ozempic, these can be used for that too. So if you are on a pre-dosed pen, and again, you really feel the need to keep your medication cold, or like I said, if you are going to be gone for more than 21 days and therefore you are going to need to keep at least some of your medication cold, you can use one of these, specific travel kind of pouches. But again, if you have the pre-dosed pen and you're going to be gone for 14 days, let's say, just take your pens. It's okay. They don't need to be refrigerated. Just make sure that when you get to wherever you're going, that you don't put them in the refrigerator, because once they are at room temperature, you need to leave them at room temperature. So like I said, unless you just really feel the need to keep them refrigerated and keep them cold before you use them, it's okay. Just pull them out of your fridge, stick them in your travel bag, make sure you've got the script with it, and go. You're just fine. My next tip is to bring some high protein or higher protein snacks with you. This, I don't care if you're going on a road trip, if you're, like I said, going on an airplane to some domestic location, or you're traveling internationally. But especially if you're traveling internationally, I would highly recommend bringing some protein snacks, because they're not so great with the protein snacks over in Europe, for example. Now, you do have to be somewhat cautious about what you bring into foreign countries, so make sure that you are checking any kind of travel restrictions. You can't bring in generally like fruits and vegetables. You can't bring in generally any dairy products or meat products, because at one point I was thinking that I would bring some like beef stick kind of things, like the chomp sticks, and then I realized that that wouldn't be a good idea. So what I brought were these protein balls. These I get from Costco. I don't think that I can link them below, unfortunately. It comes in a serving size. There are 2 balls, but they're really tasty. They're like peanut butter and oatmeal and have some chocolate chips in them, and they're very, very dense. I would say normally I can only eat 1 at a time. they're not the best source of protein, but when you're trying to get some calories in and you want a little bit of protein and you want something a little bit sweet, because like I said, especially if you're traveling internationally, it's hard to find things that are good snacks. I would highly recommend these. So if you have a Costco membership, check these out. They're just by this company called Simply Fuel. And like I said, they're just protein balls. I would highly recommend taking some protein bars. I forgot to take mine. Yeah, that was a big mistake on my part. So thankfully I did remember to bring the protein balls, and those were fine. They sufficed. I probably didn't need to bring the protein bars, but it would have been nice to maybe have another option. To be honest with you, I did look, as we were on the bus, we would obviously make stops, rest stops kind of thing along the way between cities. And yeah, and I also looked at some of their various grocery stores, but just their variety and their choices in protein bars either were way more calories than I was willing to eat in a bar. And I also personally, I don't want to waste money on bars. Like if I don't know that I like a bar, I just didn't want to buy one and then hate it and just end up throwing it away. So I looked at a few along the way and I just decided it wasn't worth it. I had the protein balls and I was good with that. But I would definitely pack, if you can buy like the individual bags of nuts, for example, or if you just have a big bag and you want to put them in individual Ziploc bags, for example, that's a great grab and go snack. It doesn't need to be refrigerated, etc. Like I said, protein chips, for example, like either the Quest ones or there's another brand and I can't remember the name of it right now, but the Quest ones are really good. You can bring a couple of those, but just try to have something so that you are either not necessarily tempted by maybe the cookies that they're passing out on the plane or whatever it is. Not that you can't eat the cookie. You guys, you always can eat honestly whatever you want on a GLP-1 medication. It obviously just comes down to portion size, and it comes down to making sure that it's not something that's going to upset your stomach. So, in general, things that are kind of high sugar and high fat may start giving you some nausea, etc. And it's always best to do protein first. So that's why I'm kind of focusing on protein snacks. But if you forget and you're on the airplane and they're passing out those little bags of pretzels, eat the pretzels. It's a little bag. It's probably 150 calories, no more, and you will be fine. It's not going to hurt you. But if you can plan ahead and take some things with you, I think that's your best bet. Now, in addition to protein snacks, I would also recommend taking some form of protein supplement with you. If you are traveling, via car, obviously it would be super easy to take the pre-made shakes. So you guys know I have a Premier Protein caramel drink every day in my coffee. It's my Proffee every day. I've been drinking that since 2020. Unfortunately, obviously going to an international location, I couldn't take those with. Again, I had planned on putting some in my checked luggage because obviously I can't travel with those in my carry-on because they violate the ounce, rule. But I thought about putting some in my checked luggage, and then again, because of like the milk dairy thing prohibition in taking that into a foreign country, I couldn't take those with. So instead, I should have thought about taking protein powder. So I will say I tried to find, and I did find a couple of pre-made protein shakes while I was there. But again, if you're in a foreign country, it's not so easy to do. They do not have the volume of protein powders and pre-made shakes like we have here. It's just very difficult to find. So I would highly recommend, like I said, especially if you're traveling internationally, that you bring some of the individual packets of protein powder, and that way you can just mix it yourself. If you're like me and you love to have your protein coffee, you could just, go to a convenience store or a little, sort of bodega is what we call them in New York. They're little like mini markets kind of thing, and just grab, you know, some milk or something like that to mix it in. I would recommend, and this is another thing, you know, either bring a shaker cup like this so you can do that, or bring a milk frother with you. These are just battery power operated, and you can just stick that in your cup and, you know, mix your protein like that. It's super easy. Either one of these obviously can really be easily packed in a suitcase. So I would highly recommend, like I said, bringing some protein powder. I know some people like to just add a little bit of milk to a little bit of water to theirs and just kind of make a protein pudding. So you could use it that way as well. But again, trying to think ahead and making sure that you are having ways where you can get the appropriate amount of protein you need each day will make your trip a lot easier. The next thing you absolutely want to make sure you have is a water bottle. It will save you, first of all, from buying a million bottles of water as you're on your trip. It allows you, you know, to just refill it when you need it. And you just, especially in the summertime, you want to make sure you're hydrated. If you are walking around, if you're going to Disney World or something and walking around amusement parks, you're going to be doing a lot of walking in very hot weather probably, and you want to make sure that you stay hydrated. So make sure that you bring a water bottle with you. Pretty much everywhere now have those water refill stations. So when you're in the airport, for example, you obviously can't bring this in filled, but you know, come in with it empty and then immediately go to one of the water fountains. Like I said, almost all of them have that water bottle filling station. You can just put that under there. You get filtered water. It's great. Then you've got it for the plane, for example, and you know, do the same. Fill it up at your hotel room before you leave for the day, and then you know, you go through the day and you go through it, then fill it as you walk around or whatnot. But it's really important. I know it can kind of be a pain, and there were like 1 or 2 days where I decided to leave that at home. One day, especially when we were doing a lot of shopping, our last day in Barcelona, I decided to leave that back in the hotel room, and I did just have some disposable, you know, water bottles that I bought during the day as we were walking around. But it's a lot easier to just have a refillable one. That way you can, you know, like I said, refill it at night too before you go to bed, so you've got water next to your bed. But take a water bottle for sure. Many of us on this journey take some form of supplements. I, for example, take a magnesium supplement, and those are 3 pills that I take in the evening. I also take a multivitamin. I also take some fiber gummies. And the easiest way for me to do those things was to get a pill organizer. Now, unfortunately, mine is in with all of our travel stuff that I already kind of packed away from my trip. But again, I will pop a picture up of the one I took with me, and I will have it linked below. It was from Amazon, and it's basically a week's worth, but it has AM and PM. And basically all I did was just grouped everything together. I knew that the one pill that looked like that was my vitamin kind of thing, and I didn't need to separate it by day and night. I knew what I was taking. So I just basically grouped it there because I needed obviously more than 7 days, because like I said, we were gone for 11 days. So I just used the rest of the week to do the rest of the week, even though it was actually the PM. But I would highly recommend, like I said, so you don't have to take like big bottles with you and things. It's just a lot more convenient. You know, you have every day covered, and you can just, you know, pop those supplements or pills out as you need them and take them for the day and then be done. And my final tip is to do some research on where you're going. So for example, if you are going to an amusement park, you know, if you're going to Universal, if you're going to Disney World, for example, do some research about what are the different eating options that you have while you're there, because obviously you're going to be doing some eating, I'm sure, in the parks, and you're going to want to know, okay, what restaurants have maybe some better options for me. And that way, if you need to make reservations ahead of time, you can do that, because I know especially at Disney World, a lot of those restaurants fill up very, very quickly. And so you want to be making reservations ahead of time if you need to. You also can, find out if you can bring food into the parks. I'm pretty sure at Disney World you were allowed to. We haven't been to Disney World since the twins were 4, so that was 11 years ago. But at least at that time, you were still allowed to bring like food and beverage into the parks. So again, if you brought some of your protein snacks, etc., on the trip, bring some of those, bring a cooler with you and pop those in there so they don't get melted in the heat, that kind of thing. But have some things so that, again, you're not necessarily tempted by the, whatever that Dole Whip, thing is. Again, maybe have a couple bites of your kids, that's it. But you don't need to have the whole thing yourself. And that way you can get maybe a little taste of theirs, but have your protein bar or whatever. So you feel full, you get some protein, but you also got to sample a little bit of the Dole Whip too. Obviously it doesn't have to be Dole Whip, but you get my point. The other things you want to do, let's say you're going to just a regular city or you're like me and you're traveling internationally, is look to see what kinds of foods are prevalent in that area. Like I said, especially if you're traveling internationally. Now, obviously internationally, most big cities have all sorts of types of cuisine, right? You can get Italian in China, you can get French food in Italy, etc. So if you're going to a big city, you're obviously going to be able to find different types of cuisine, which may be easier for you. But for me, going to Spain, for example, and because a lot of the meals that we were having were at specific restaurants, that made it a little bit harder for me. So that is one of the reasons why I did not do so well while I was on my trip. If I were doing it again, I would try to do some more research and try to find some things that might be more palatable, or like I said, bring more things with me. I forgot to bring my protein bars, so that was a mistake on my part. And like I said, unfortunately, they just don't have a lot of the same kind of high protein bars and drinks and things like that we have. They also don't have kind of the yogurts that we have. I couldn't find boiled eggs. Anyway, it was a mess, but I would say that was my downfall. And like I said, if I had done some better planning, I probably would have been able to get around at least some of it. So that being said, make sure you do your research, see what kind of options there are, especially if you're going to, like I said, a specific place like an amusement park or something where you're going to be, very pigeonholed into just what they have there, as opposed to, if you're just out in a city, you could probably find anything. The other thing you want to research is the hotel you're going to. Find out, one, do they have a gym? Because if you want to be able to work out while you're there, continue your, exercise routine, that's always helpful to know. And 2, find out if they have a mini fridge. And make sure that it's a mini fridge that you can use, especially if you're traveling domestically. A lot of the hotel rooms, especially if you're staying at like a nicer hotel, the mini fridges that are in the rooms are completely full of mini bar items, and they are weight sensitive. So if you take something out, the room is going to get charged for it. So if that's the case, ask them if they have extra fridges that they can put in your room. So again, if you are trying to keep your medication cold, you can put it in there. But also if you're trying to keep some, snacks or some kind of, protein shakes or yogurt or things like that need to be refrigerated, you have a place to put them. And finally, if you are going to be somewhere where you're traveling and you have access to a car, then that's great, right? Because you have the ability to do a little grocery run, right? You could, if you're here domestically, you can run to a grocery store or to a Walmart or something and pick up some of those things so you don't necessarily have to bring them with you on the trip. Obviously, if you're on a road trip, you can just pack a cooler or whatever and you'll have all those things with you. But if you have access to a car, that's great because like I said, you can go pick up some of these things that will make traveling a breeze. So that's it. I think that was 6 tips to help you travel this summer or whenever it is when you're on a GLP-1 medication. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions for me, let me know in the comments below. If you have any great travel tips for somebody that I missed, make sure you put those in the comments as well. We can all learn from each other here, and that's what I love about this community. If you enjoyed the video, I would love it if you would give it a thumbs up. It does help the YouTube algorithm. And if you enjoy this kind of content and you're on a GLP or weight loss medication journey and you want to join me here, I would love to have you click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when I upload videos. If you haven't had enough of me yet, there'll be another video up here for you to watch. And remember, kindness and hate spread the same. The choice is yours. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Take care.